Hey, everybody, it's Trags, and this week on Red Sox Beat, I welcome back an old friend, somebody actually I haven't talked to in a long time. This is going to be great to talk Red Sox with him, the one and only John Tomase, doing a spectacular job, as he always does, covering the Red Sox and everything baseball for NBC Sports Boston, and it's great to have you back. I appreciate you joining me, John. You can follow John, of course, on Twitter at @JTomase, all one word. How you been, bud?
I've been great. It's been too long, Trags.
It has been. Obviously, I've been transplanted out to the Midwest and Cincinnati, and the Reds are playing red hot baseball. They are making a charge actually in the second wild card spot. Funny I bring that up because about a month ago, I would never have guessed this, but the Red Sox are now tied for the second wild card spot with the Oakland A's at 70 and 55. The Yankees have blown right past them for the number one wild card spot. And I don't think anybody really, I don't think the way the Red Sox are playing, John, they're going to catch Tampa, right?
Yeah, I think we got to, focus on the more immediate, targets because the Rays are pulling away. And, frankly, the Red Sox haven't played well enough to be in that conversation. It'd be one thing, if we'd say, oh, it's been a little bit of bad luck, but it's like they've been playing bad baseball for really since early July at this point. So we're going on a month and a half. And I've been beating the drum. I may be going down with the ship on this one, Trags, that this is a better team than how they've played. They can still make a run. I'm starting to have my doubts. I mean, the stretch they're in right now is going to determine the season to me because it's terrible teams.
Right.
Really, you need to win. You need to win the series finale against Texas, the whole thing. So, I didn't see this coming to this extreme for sure.
So I wouldn't say that I saw it coming, but I've said all along, John, the thing that concerned me with this team is they reminded me of the 78 Red Sox and to a lesser extent, the 2011 Red Sox, that they were playing the best baseball, arguably in baseball, for the better part of 3 months. And then they hit a wall. Obviously the 78 Red Sox kind of collapsed in August, kind of like this team is doing. And the 2011 Red Sox completely, the bottom fell out in September. We all remember that. We were all around for that. But this team, to me, was too dependent on its lineup. And I think its lineup did very well, believe it or not. And I know it's people have criticized the depth of the lineup, but when you take a look at the top four batters in the order or the top four hitters in the lineup, I think they carried the team for the better part of the 3-month period I was talking about.
Oh, yeah, no question. And really, like, the irony of where they are now. So there's lots of people who have argued they were never that good. This is what they are. Dan Shaughnessy has been beating that drum. And he would say this is not 2011 or 78 because those teams were powerhouse teams that completely folded. This is a team that was playing so far beyond the sum of its parts that it was inevitable that something like this would happen. I can't really go there, but I will say the irony of all this is we all expected coming into the year, the offense would be good, the pitching would be shaky, the starting pitching in particular. The starting pitching, by and large, has been fine. There was a little stretch there before Sale and Houck got added to the rotation where they were iffy, but otherwise they've given you everything you needed. They are where they are right now because of their offense, and that was supposed to be the one part of the team that no matter what happened, well, at least we know they're going to hit. Like, right. That's why I thought they would be a better than 500 team this year, is that they will hit. And recently, that's just been their complete undoing. They, Alex Verdugo is not the hitter that he was in April. JD Martinez isn't the hitter that he was in April. Xander Bogaerts. It's all the guys that you talked about who carried them.
Right.
They're not doing it now. Rafael Devers with runners in scoring position has been abysmal for the last month. So it's like this is what's put them in this predicament.
Well, do you think at the All-Star break, or excuse me, at the trading deadline, they should have gone out and gotten another starting pitcher, to go along with the return of Chris Sale? Because, John, you and me both know that they sold the Red Sox fandom the whole idea that when you get Chris Sale back, you're like making a trade for a number one starter. And I think that was expecting a bit too much. So look, I think Sale's been very good coming off the IL and coming back from Tommy John. He's 2-0. He's won his 2 starts. He's looked pretty good. Correct me if I'm wrong in your eyes, but I think he's looked certainly very good. But I think they needed another starter in that rotation to give them depth innings and give them the ability to win 4 out of every 5 games. I don't think they have that now, even with Sale back.
Yeah, so I was less, I could certainly make a case for going out and getting a starter. With Tanner Houck and Sale, I say you've kind of created that depth now because Garrett Richards and Martin Perez are in the pen. I know those guys hadn't pitched very effectively, which is why they're in the pen. But my thing was get a first baseman. I mean, the trickle-down effect of not getting a first baseman, what it has meant to this roster. So you go out and you get Kyle Schwarber. He can't play the field at all, as it turns out, because of his hamstring, but he can at least DH. But DHing requires JD Martinez in the outfield. We've seen a number of misplays, either throwing to the wrong base, not making, converting catchable outs. So that gets, then you have Bobby Dahlbeck at first, who is a subpar first baseman. We saw that, most glaringly in the finale against the Yankees when he boots the ball by Anthony Rizzo, the guy that maybe the Red Sox should have gotten. So it's like your first base defense is worse. Your outfield defense is worse. Kike, you brought up Jarren Duran, who is not as strong a defender as Kike Hernandez in center. You've moved Kike Hernandez to second, where it turns out he's not as good a defender as he is in center. So it's like there have been so many trickle-down effects that have impacted the roster that, to me, all go back to not filling it's got to be the easiest position to go get at the trade deadline. Just go get a league average first baseman. They didn't do that. That is the move, to me, more than anything else that they're going to regret, and they're paying the price for right now.
So, and I brought this up a couple of weeks ago on this very podcast, and my point was, if they wanted Anthony Rizzo, don't mess around. Go out, find out what the Cubs really wanted from you. And certainly they were going to ask for 1 or 2 of your top prospects, but you had to make a decision at that point. And my sense was, once they asked for the top prospect and they felt like it wasn't going to get done, they gave up on the deal.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, Chaim Bloom has made it clear that
he's not giving up prospects.
He's not giving up prospects. And I think that was, considering where his team was and how much it had overachieved and what it had done to get to that point at the trade deadline where they were going on fumes. They needed reinforcements. They expected reinforcements. I mean, go back and read the coverage, July 27th, 28th, 29th. You have Nathan Eovaldi being like, oh, yeah, we know what the holes on our roster are, and, we know what we need to fill them. And then you have Bogarts, saying we're looking for help. And you have Matt Barnes being like, I would love to set up for Craig Kimbrell. Like, they all needed help. They knew it. They expected it. They were waiting for it. And while I understand and I appreciate Bloom's long-term vision, because I think ultimately that's how you build the year in and year out contender, I think he misread his own clubhouse to say that, you know what, I'm going to prioritize keeping all of my prospects, and I'm not really going to give this team any help right now. And at some point, that can't be an excuse anymore that, oh, they got nothing at the trade deadline and it deflated them and whatever. Like, if you're a mentally tough team, you have to overcome that, and they haven't. But in that moment, I think it was a huge misstep, and I bet it's something that he learns from going forward.
Showed you this off our recording. Now I'll show it to you on it. That is John Tomase's terrific column of August 20th, just a couple of days ago. It might be time for the Sox to show some literal fight. I love the reference, the historical perspective you brought up to July 24th, 2004. We were both, I was at Fenway. You were at Fenway for that, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I assumed that, but I sometimes don't want to assume things, John. So you say that it might be time for the Sox to show some literal fight. What leads you to believe that if this team showed some literal fight, it might wake them up?
Yeah, I mean, it's grasping probably. It's a little bit desperate, but that's where they're at right now. They feel like a team that's sleepwalking. And Saturday's game against Texas was really sort of like the last straw when you consider 5 errors Christian Vasquez being lazy with a tag at the plate, Erod losing a ball off his foot, ground ball to shortstop that rolls to the left field fence. It's like, what is happening with this team? They are sleepwalking right now. And so, you go back to July of 2004, we're talking about A-Rod, we're talking about Jason Varitek, and the mitt to the face heard around the world. That obviously woke up that Red Sox team, inspired that Red Sox team. I just feel like this one needs something to get its adrenaline flowing again. And, we saw this in Toronto a couple weeks ago, which was, to me, not the way to go about it. Hansel Robles, who was brand new, hits Randall Grichuk, then starts glaring into the Blue Jays dugout. Then they're yelling at him, and he's yelling at them. You can see Red Sox players are not interested whatsoever in rushing to the aid of the new guy. And it's like, you can't show up to a new team and nearly start a brawl. That's just idiotic, But somebody who has been on this team and fighting with this team since day one, whether it's Nick Pivetta, I don't know who, it's like, if you need to drill somebody, if you need to clear the benches, like, do something. I liken it to, if you're a Sopranos fan, like at the end of season 1 when Tony is just sleepwalking through life and then someone takes a shot at him and blows up the orange juice in his hand and suddenly he's alive again. It's like, they need that. Spoiler alert, by the way. Sorry if you haven't seen The Sopranos. But they need something. They need some external, force to wake them the bleep up, because right now it's not working.
Alex Cora, what role does he have in trying to wake them the bleep up?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. That's his thing. Like, he's a guy who we know from past experience here, and even back to when he was a player in the 2007, 2008 range. Like, Cora was always the guy who had his finger on the pulse of what's going on in his clubhouse. And I mean, I don't doubt for a second that he's among the people disappointed by the lack of activity at the trade deadline. But, one of the reasons you brought Alex Cora in here is because this is what he does. He knows how to push buttons. He knows that Eduardo Rodriguez might need to be kicked in the butt, whereas Rafael Devers might need a hug. He's very good at sort of, reading who needs what kind of motivation. Like, now is the time for him to be pushing those buttons, because of all the things we can say about an Alex Cora team, like, sleepwalking isn't and should not be one of them. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's juggled the lineup. He's certainly, demoted 2 guys out of the starting rotation. I wonder what other changes he can make. At some point, it's about the players.
How frustrated was he after the game Saturday night?
Oh, I mean, you heard it in his voice, embarrassed. I mean, that was the first time we really, so as you know, little inside baseball here, Johnny Miller always asks the first question after games. Usually losses. Johnny loves asking questions after losses. But, Cora makes it a point that, that doubleheader sweep in New York, like losing the finale in New York, just the season sort of going down the tubes. If Johnny is on the call and Cora comes on Zoom, the first thing he does is, "What's up, Johnny?" Like a very upbeat, "What's up, Johnny?" Right. Almost like heading off like the questions that he knows are coming. And after this game, it was not like that. He was pissed, as he should have been, because it's one thing to lose because you're not hitting, because you're swinging at bad pitches, because you're trying to do too much and all that stuff. It's another to lose the way they did on Saturday, where it looked like they were going through the motions. And so he showed that frustration, and I'll be fascinated to see over the next week how the team responds.
Ownership. What role do you think they have above Heimblum? Because it is out there that Heimblum could only do so much, and ownership charged him, right? I mean, a big part of the storyline for the first half of the season is how great Heimblum, how great of a job he did, given the fact that ownership and, Sam Kennedy and the executive part of the franchise and the operation wanted him to try and win, but rebuild what it is assumed and presumed that Dave Dombrowski tore down just to win in 2018 and have that one chance at immortality. And they got the job done, obviously, in 2018, the best season in franchise history with a World Series title. But Heimblum was charged with rebuilding it all up. Don't tear it down just for a one-year run. To me, what happened or what didn't happen at the trade deadline has a lot to do with the charge of ownership towards Heimblum.
Oh, no question. And I think some of us, me included, underestimated the importance of staying below the luxury tax, which
Right.
is such a red herring to me and is really infuriating if you're a Red Sox fan. And I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that Chaim Bloom necessarily, if left to his own devices, would say, you know what, more important than acquiring talent this trade deadline is staying below that CBT number. That to me comes from on high. And we know it. John Henry admitted it out loud, and basically what were among his last public comments a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now.
I remember I was
when
there.
He said, yeah, when we were up in that suite in Fenway, and he said that, getting below the luxury tax was important. And at the time, that didn't offend me so much at the time, because I feel like the teams that just spend to solve their problems are uncreative, and it doesn't necessarily get them anywhere. There are exceptions. I mean, the Dodgers have spent, and they've spent well. The Padres, you're seeing a little bit of team that has spent like crazy, and it's not necessarily paying off. Your Reds making a charge at them, obviously. Joey Votto on fire, but I digress. So anyway, like ownership's thing of getting below the tax, initially I kind of understood. I'm like, this team isn't that good. You shouldn't be spending. You need to be creative. So they brought in someone creative. At the trade deadline, I thought it was abhorrent and, like malpractice almost at an ownership level to say we will not spend beyond this threshold. Like, they were going to be a first-time offender. So even if they had spent $20 million beyond the threshold at the deadline, it would have been a $4 million bill. That would have been it. Yep. And yes, you've restarted your clock, and maybe that's a thing, but there's a new CBA that's going to be negotiated. Our old buddy Evan Drellick had a story in The Athletic last week about how owners have proposed a $100 million floor to be funded by a tax on teams that spend above $180 million. It's like if the Reds, and for that's a non-starter for the players, because they know now that the tax level is a salary cap. And if that's what ownership was thinking, well, we need to get as close to that 180 number as they can, and they sort of punted on this season as a result of that, I just think that's gross.
Yeah, and I also think that one thing you're going to hear from ownership is, sure, we'll spend above the luxury tax, and we have to. We'll raise all the ticket prices. We'll raise all the fees associated with the ball club, and then see how much fans and our corporate partners bitch. That's what I think. That's why you don't hear anything from ownership on all of this, because they know once you go down that rabbit hole, that's essentially the conclusion most are going to draw.
Yeah, but I think people ultimately, by and large, people want them to spend on the team. It's like, and if the team wins, you know what? You'll pay the higher prices. Like people, that's a tale as old as time. I guess, so I don't really think John, that's like a motivator.
But I wonder about that with a team that's won 4 times, and a lot of people are rethinking their priorities in life. I just believe that.
Do you think the Red Sox are worried about raising ticket prices? They never have. I don't think that's ever. I think that only when they lose.
Right. But I think there is a fine line that they walk when talking about we can keep raising prices and raising fees associated with the ball club. Eventually, I think a lot of these games are going to go on pay-per-view way down the road. But I think that's a possibility. And I think that there is not necessarily a fine line, but a tipping point where they lose a lot of the fans, and then you start seeing even Fenway 3/4 full instead of totally full. And I don't think they want that.
Yeah, I get that, but it's like, if that's your concern, then don't raise ticket prices. Like it's not that, it's a multi-billion-dollar property. Like they can afford to put ticket prices wherever they want. They are very much a what the market will bear kind of franchise. So to me, like that's looking at it the wrong way. I think from our perspective, if we say that they're worried about anything like that, I don't know.
All right. I'll buy that. Going forward, the Red Sox, the chances you give them of making the playoffs right now, I'd say it's no better than 50-50 that they are even in the wild card game.
Yeah, I'm slightly higher than that. And like I told you off the top, I might just be going down with the ship on this one. I do feel like their schedule down the stretch is a lot easier. They have, right now we're in the middle of Texas and Cleveland and Minnesota. They finish up with Washington, Baltimore. They got multiple series left with the Orioles, who have completely given up.
Yep.
So, yeah, you still have Tampa, you still have Toronto, but I just feel like the schedule plays enough in their favor that they should have a better than 50-50 chance of getting there. I think the stretch we're entering now, where the Red Sox schedule is relatively easy, the Yankees are going out on the West Coast, Oakland's a good team, the Angels are a little tougher out there. They have Atlanta, who's one of the hottest teams in the National League. So this will be the moment. If Red Sox and Yankees are going to flip back, it's going to be, in the next couple weeks.
All right. It has been great catching up with you again, John. I know you've got a busy week ahead. I know you've got to catch up with Alex Cora and ask him all the questions that Red Sox Nation needs to be asked of the manager who led them to a 2018 Worlds. By the way, I think Cora deserves a lot of credit for the way he runs the ball club. I really do. I think, given what the team went through last year, even in the pandemic season, he's done a pretty tremendous job over his time here in Boston.
Oh, it's 1,000%. I mean, you just consider the talent level on this team and what we all thought they would be, 82 wins, maybe something like that. The fact that he's got them, on pace to probably win 90, even in a bad year, and be in the hunt for the playoffs. We shouldn't lose sight of how unexpected that was coming into the year.
All right. I want to thank everyone for downloading today's podcast. Thank our terrific guest, John Tomase of NBC Sports Boston, covering the Red Sox for NBC Sports Boston. Follow him, of course, on Twitter at jtomase, all one word. Also want to thank our great sponsor, betonline.ag. For John Tomase, I'm Mike Petraglia, and this has been the Red Sox Beat podcast, powered by CLNS Media.